Welcome to the World United. Welcome to the World United.
So we get the panel started. I would like to welcome everyone. So welcome Maria, welcome Tammy, welcome Coach Carol, welcome LK Tommy, welcome to this panel. And listening to you, I'm realizing that the right education is very empowering. The right education at the right time is one of the most empowering things. We have Maria, who educates people on how to be engaging, how to have that screen presence, and that's not necessary just for performance but for everyone, because we are constantly communicating and to become aware of that. And then we have LK Tommy, who works with our future, our future generation. And we do live in a very, very fast-paced world, and a very different world, which is going to keep on changing. We have Coach Carol, who's encouraging us to discover our ancestry, educate ourselves. And then we have Tammy Horton, who talks about mental health issues. And these are all these areas, while they may seem very diverse, they are all very necessary for us to educate ourselves in. So my question to you is, and this is for everyone, is that, we've all been through formal education, right? And many of the things that y'all are teaching is not a part of formal education. And it seems that right now, what formal education is doing and what we need to be complete and whole and successful is something else, and there seems to be a gap. So do you think that there is this gap, and how are you addressing that gap? What skills are you giving, or what are you giving to the people so that they can be successful and bridging that gap? If that makes sense, and anyone can join in.
I'm happy to go first. I actually work in schools teaching children all about themselves. So we are making
it is a little different, right? But it is a little different than what you were taught when you were.
Oh, very different to what I was taught. Absolutely. And I was just about to say, it's just coming into the education system now. The education system is slowly catching up and understanding that there's more to ABCs, 1, 2, 3s at this point in time, and they've had several goes successfully and not so successfully about understanding and getting the social and emotional curriculum, is what we call it in school land, and getting that connected to the young people. And it's really exciting now to sort of see that schools, and there's lots of them out there, particularly in Australia, or well, in Brisbane, where I'm based, who's actually starting to make this move forward now into finding people who can go in and educate whole classrooms of children. Because, as I said, I've worked in schools now for over 30 years, and I only got to see the tricky children in schools. I didn't actually get to see the children in schools. They're all sitting down doing the learning. And one time I got handed 12-year-old boys. They were in year 7 at that point in time. And they wanted me to move them from having tricky life experiences to be able to sit down and do what their learning is in their classrooms, and things like that. And at first I thought, how am I going to do this? And then when I went through on that journey with them, that's when I really started connecting with, they need to know themselves more. So then I had this little boy come up to me and he says, I want to know what you just taught Johnny, because he's now sitting in class and doing his learning and I'm not seeing any of that behaviour. And I said, great. So I went to his teacher at that time and I said, can I teach your whole class about what it is that I've been teaching the other boys? And she goes, yes. So I started teaching whole class from that time on. So I don't actually work with young children individually anymore. I actually only work with whole classrooms of children, or I have whole Zoom sessions with children where I have 4 or 7 children online at the same time, because they all realise they actually all need to learn the skills. So it's exciting now that we are moving into this education world now with our young people to teach them. So when they come up against those tricky life experiences, as we're all going to have, that they're ready and prepared for them and know what to do with them. So it is an exciting place in education within schools at the present moment, as we are starting to recognise that it's really important for our young children, which is why I teach my skills and I teach it slowly, explicitly, so they understand it. So yeah, it's exciting times actually.
Yeah, I'll follow on from that. Thanks, LK. That was very interesting. My journey began with teaching young children too, and then I morphed into teaching adults later in my career. And I found that learning never stops. We want our learning in different shapes and sizes and packages these days. And this is how the world is allowing us to do it. The biggest trend at the moment is for micro learning. We want small, integral, visual, and we want it now. And what I've been doing is building my Preserving Family History Academy, where I'm presenting courses to adults who want to learn from the start how to use their genealogy to transform themselves, and specifically focusing on the story writing, because that's where most of their thinking comes through about what impact their ancestors have had on them. So the micro-learning is part of our way of filling that gap that you mentioned, Mansi. And who knows what is around the corner in the next 5 or 10 years in terms of the style of learning. One of the things that I've been focused on recently is training others to use Zoom. I'm a member of the Toastmasters International, and so they have had to learn in a hurry how to conduct their meetings online through Zoom. So that's been another aspect of my giving of my services back to the community.
Thank you, Carol. We've all had to pivot in these times, right? I think there are so many sectors that have had to completely, with this totally unknown and unimaginable pandemic. And I think we've all learned and educated, had to re-educate ourselves so many ways. Can we hear from Tammy and Maria also?
What I'm finding, particularly as I'm going through, because as a parent now of young adults, when they were going through their teenage years, was not having an understanding of exactly what is going on in teenage bodies at that time. So everyone says, oh yeah, they're being a typical teenager, but you don't realize exactly what is going on for them. It's the biggest period of change that they go through from when they were little, from when they were born, and the brain is doing this massive pruning exercise, as well as them trying to have all the physical changes and fit in with society. So my education side of things is trying to engage parents to have an understanding of what's going on for their adolescent kids, so that they can realize that when you say to a teenager, why did you do that? And they say, well, I don't know, it was a good idea. The reason why they're saying that is because the part of the brain that does all the pros and cons lists and works out whether it's risky or not, it actually hasn't started to form till at least they're 14, and it continues to develop till they're 25. So the answer is, I don't know, is an appropriate answer. And everything that our young kids go through, they're going through for the first period of time. So we have to sit in their reality, their bubble of reality, because I use bubbles a lot. Sit in their bubble of reality and remember that. So the gap that I see is adults forgetting that kids are going through stuff for the first time, and we need to sit in their reality and talk to them in their language, not in adult language, because they don't comprehend that. And so what we've heard today with the sharing of stories, the sharing of voice, the sharing of play, and connecting into that sense of self and getting them to understand who they are is really, really important. But we need to be educating the parents to be able to support that, not just in the education sector, because that's only a part of it.
Tammy, that's fantastic. I'm thinking, I've got a teenage daughter myself, and it's quite challenging, let me tell you. Sometimes think, do I even know my child? That's not who I remember them to be. So I'm very fascinated about those gaps, and I think it is important. And at the same time, it's quite complex because you're so involved that you don't want to know that part. You just want them to listen to you. It's just like, didn't you say you were going to clean your room? I thought I heard you say you were going to do that. Why do I need to keep reminding you? And so on. But thank you for sharing. And also, Carol, I've been doing a genealogy on my family history because in the counselling course I'm doing, we did family constellation systems. I actually wrote a song on my family constellation system, and it's in Spotify. And it's actually called a family constellation song. It's called My Gift of Love. And I don't know if you're interested in looking at that, because it was a real strong reflection on, so it's just in Spotify or Apple Music. So you just look up my, and just me, the little girl waving. And it was very fascinating to do the deep work of realizing our impact as children and how we've filled in the gaps, I think, for our family, and continue to do that without even being conscious of it at times, because it's so deeply rooted in our system, you know, who we are as children. So anyway, so with myself, the gaps I notice, this is about identifying gaps in the work that we do. I think the gap I'm trying to restore or bridge together is the gap between two voices, that we can become one voice. And that takes a lot of mindfulness and desire. Like, unless I have a very strong reason for that, most of us will pull our end of the, you know, this is more important, or that's not as important, you know. Everybody thinks that what they're doing is most important. And we often don't spend enough time actively listening to the needs and the feelings of others. And so I love the work of Ken Wilber, Integral Life. I study a lot of integral theory. I study, I also look at a lot of work by Father Richard Raw, who is the Action and Contemplation Center. I look at a lot of spiritual tools, James Finley, and I'm also part of the Integral Christian Network. I just seem to have a Christian background, but it doesn't really matter. It's more the purpose or what drives us to want to communicate from those separate edges and coming into that common goal of what we're here to say. And I love the work of non-violent communication. I can't pronounce his name. He's passed away, but I'm going to look it up because it's very, very powerful. Non-violent communication teaches us to become observers and not necessarily evaluate everything, you know, so just observe and talk about the issue. Here we go. There's a whole website built on this, non-violent communication, and it's by, and I should really know his name, Marshall Rosenberg. And it's a powerful tool because non-violent communication is about how do we speak what we need to say what we need to say, and stay in the observer's sort of point of view and not necessarily become the evaluator of something. I mean, it may be challenging to do that in every role, but to just openly say, you know, this is what I notice, this is what I feel, this is what I need, and then making a request. And if we can come across with that helped me understand that when I come in as an observer, and I also have needs and I've got feelings, and then I can just make a request, but at no point nobody's been blamed. I also like the work of Byron Katie. Byron Katie's great because she talks about 3 businesses, and I think it's really important to know what kind of business you're in, you know, your business, other people's business, and God's business or reality. Some of those concepts have helped me help others distinguish where the boundaries are and how to still find that area where it's this and that. So it doesn't have to be this but that, but it's this and that, and sort of saying that both opinions may be right, you know, and how do we have that win-win in conversation. So the gaps is all about that. It's like, how do we come to the middle using non-violent communication? Some of the work of Byron Katie is fantastic in that, knowing what's our business and how to really know what it is that we need and our feelings, being aware of ourselves, and to make that request, or at times understand that the other person also has feelings and needs.
Thank you so much, Maria. You know, when I work with kids, it's usually it's really showing them, and not just with kids, even with adults, like moving from I'm right and or that other person is wrong and moving towards what is truth. And that may involve something of what the other person is saying, something of what you may be saying. And it may also involve something that we don't know yet because we are on the search towards the truth. And I see, like, I hear all of you when I'm saying that. Maria, my question to you is that, right now in the new generation, pretty much everyone wants to either be a YouTuber nowadays. There was a time where you would ask the kids what they wanted to be, and they would say fireman or astronaut or something like that. And now many of them say YouTuber. These are
It's
and then and then the pace of life is moving so fast. I have heard doctors saying that we need to be more engaging because our students are no longer listening to us, and these are medical students who are already like motivated and everything. And so what are your, and I know you shared about aligning the mindsets, and but do you have any, how do we increase our stage presence? How do we not just stage presence, how do we increase our presence? How do we create a voice that engages and empowers? How do we go about doing that?
Yeah, I think it's space. We need space. Like, what's happening is everybody just has, delayed gratification issues. I see it,
Yes,
and I want to do
absolutely.
it. Okay, I want that, and you got to do it. And there's no space. There's no consideration. There's no presence. It's just I want. And to me, it's about space, creating, listening, and because your question is, I'm going to get you to rephrase that again, because I'm going on this tangent, because I think we kind of need a bit of a gap. We need to go, yes, I want to be visible, I want to be out there, but I'm also interested in what you're doing, because it's the whole concept. I mean, bringing up Ken Wilber before was because I love the integral theory, because it talks about the higher your consciousness is, the more psychologically developed you can be, you can move to these higher levels of thinking, which affects our communication by learning to include the previous stage. So we have to actually see ourselves where we're at, recognize it, and say, okay, this is not making me more integrated with others. It's actually separating me from others. And at that point, to recognize that takes that maturity, reflection, going back to reflection. How can I communicate better? Is like, how am I isolating from them? Why is it that I can't communicate? I'm actually pulling away and isolating and having my own agenda. And even YouTube, I love all that, because that's bringing the world closer. That is actually putting us all in the same swimming pool. Because now I put something on and I'm going across the whole world, right? So if I'm prepared to be out there, and that takes courage too, and you've got to want to do it, and you've got to be ready for it. You've got to be ready for it, that you're going in the big pool of life. We're now visible everywhere. It's communicating everywhere, not just speaking to one person. We're speaking to thousands in one time. So that's another form of integration. And some people resist it. They don't want to do that. They're too like, oh my goodness, I can't imagine a million people listening to me at once. But every artist wants that, and every business leader, I think, would want that. Why won't you want a multi-purpose?
Literally everyone wants that.
Multi-purpose conversation. Yeah, I mean, when I do my snips with my clients and I quickly grab it, oh, this is amazing, I feel so inspired. I say, don't speak, I'm just going to say something, and I turn it into a file, and then I put it online, because I want 1 million people to listen to that message again and again and again, and I want it to be forever. In fact, I'm going to write on my will, do not delete anything that's online when I'm gone. No, I want my voice to resonate forever. And why? I'm not showing off. I used to think I used to be a show off. No, but it's like, no, I believe that I have something to share. But time will tell. Time will tell if things change, you know what I mean? The way we use our language, we still might be old-fashioned for another 100 years. I don't know. That's
Maria, you need to put that at the end of your list of passwords on your will.
I love that.
So these days, your family just turns you all off. Turn it off. It's gone. I'm like, no, let that
Yeah, what you're saying is really resonating for me. And I'm now in my 76th year, and my learning is not stopping. And one of the things that I was afraid to do at the beginning of this year was to show up live on Facebook. So I challenged myself and did 30 days consistently showing up, being present, and doing a live cast. And many other people are finding that so empowering these days, just using the technology to put themselves into the zone, challenging them to be present and to have a message to share with others. Live casting taught me a whole raft of new skills.
Coach
So-
Carol, I want to ask you, please go on.
I was just going to say, so if you're globally minded, you willingly do that, and you're there to share. But if, depending on your mindset, there's ego, ethno, global, cosmic, there's all these levels. And, depending on your mindset, if you're ethno or ego, you might think, oh, that person's really wants to always be out there. Well, why do they want to be so visible? It's like, hey, we should be visible. Have you got a message? It's something to share? Share it. Let's get out there and share it. Be happy about that. Be proud of that.
That's awesome. So, Coach Carol, I wanted to ask you something. So, when we are discovering our ancestry, and actually, interestingly, the place you mentioned in Ganges, my parents have already been there, and they were able to find our family history going through hundreds of years. So, my question to you is that when we, in the past 20, 30 years, there's been a lot of interest in discovering your ancestry and learning. We already wear the nose and features of our ancestors. We carry genetic diseases, and more subtly, we carry gifts and patterns. Are there any? Have you come across any disadvantages? Like, can you walk us through what are some of the benefits, but are there any blocks that come up? Is there any fresh trauma that gets triggered? Can you take us through that?
Absolutely. That happens all the time. One of those is called the brick wall, where you can't get any further back than great-grandmother so-and-so. And the other is finding out some of the things that your ancestor did that got into the newspapers and made him notorious, or her. And that gives a whole new spin on what you've inherited from your past ancestors. So the recent story that I wrote was about just one of those ancestors who had been rather naughty, and he had falsified some of the evidence, so he called it, to prove his inheritance to a claim to an estate worth £60 million. And as I discovered more and more, not only did he falsify it to the public, he actually falsified it in the old parish registers. And there it stays for a millennia for people to find. And that's rather shocking for one genealogist in this century to find out about a genealogist in the last century. So yes, there are some things that you may not want to know. So tread carefully and be sure that when you're telling the story, you find out all the facts, but don't let the facts get in the way of your good story, because you can write a really compelling story with some of the fiction or imaginings of how those ancestors lived. And getting back to the brick wall, we have many, many different people who focus in on giving their services to people to help them break down those brick walls, how to get past that particular level, where to go, who to ask, and what documents to prove that you are going back in time to King Edward V or King Charlemagne or right back to Confucius. Who knows what is in your dynasty? So yes, there are two things that you mentioned that we need to be wary of.
And does it change the trajectory of their life once they find out? Does it change? Is it like a curiosity, or does it actually change something in their life?
Well, if you watch some of the programs where our celebrities have all the facilities with senior experienced genealogists doing their tree and finding out those results, they always say at the end of the program that it has changed their view of themselves and their family. You know, someone might have found out that the secret that had been in their family for so long was not so new. It's not so bad. And that changed the way they viewed their ancestors. We all have that.
Thank you, Carol. You know, that I think that is, I think in different ways, everyone here has been talking about expanding ourselves, going out of our comfort zone and learning, and in that, getting united. Because, you know, you may not empathize, or you may not be able to see someone who is who lives a life very different than you, but when you see that your ancestors have lived lives very different, it kind of unifies. So, thank you.
Absolutely, because when you delve into your ancestors' lives, you learn more about the history of the place, and place becomes an integral part of your identity. You identify with the place that they came from. For me, my background today is in lovely Wodonga in the northeast of Victoria, but my roots go back to Wales. And it's interesting when you do your genealogy journey in real time, it changes you profoundly when you go back to your hometown and you find out where you were born, or you see where you've been as a child. That is transformational. So it really is something that we've not been able to do for the last couple of years. We can do it virtually thanks to Google Earth and so on, but going back to your own place in time where your family came from makes a huge difference to the way you feel about your life.
Thank you so much, Coach Carol. You know, LK, I would like to, I have a couple of questions. One is that, you know, today, I mean, I'm really heartened to see you're teaching the kids how to link, you know, their own experiences, emotions, you know, their experiences to their emotions, you know, how the inner creates the outer world. And, you know, they're getting that, becoming more aware, and they're getting a peek into that at a very, very young age. You know, I have two questions. One is, you know, there has been a lot of talk in the past decade or so about the law of attraction. And this makes me feel, and, you know, that there is a lot of talk about law of attraction is attracting what we want. And you're teaching kids to discover themselves, which is who they are. And then probably, I think everyone, if anyone else wants to jump on this law of attraction question, is do you think we attract what we want or who we are? What do you think?
That's a really good question, actually, because it's a bit like the chicken and the egg story sometimes as well. You know, sometimes we have to know who we are to understand what we want, and other people use it the other way around. Some people know what they want, but they don't know who they are. So, you know, for the law of attraction, I do find once they understand themselves, so coming from who you are, they do create what they want. But when I work with children, I work with where they're at that point in time. So sometimes I work with what they want to understand who they are. So yes, there is a different, but they definitely get to that end point of creating their own experiences, which is all about law of attraction, you know, because then they're creating and manifesting and responding to what it is that they want to have happen as well. And usually sometimes when they get the want, if they stand for who they are and what they want, sometimes when they get the want, they go, oh, that wasn't what I was picturing. I go, really, wasn't it? No, I was picturing this over here and I wasn't picturing this. So we then go backwards and go, well, this is, why did you think you wanted this? And we have conversations and stories around that. And it's really fascinating because it always reveals something back about themselves at that point in time. So, you know, I use language purposely. So I say, I teach mindfulness, meditation, and law of attraction and manifesting, but I don't do any of those things as well, because I use language differently to get them to that point, which is why I use the logical brain, because sometimes when I say to them, I definitely teach about breathing, circulate the oxygen around their body. But if I say to them, I want you to use a breathing pattern now, the unconscious mind will go, oh, I'm actually breathing. I actually don't need to listen to that. If I say to them, though, I want you to circulate the oxygen around your body, the unconscious mind goes, oh, yes, I'm not doing that very effectively. I'm not exercising that diaphragm enough. I'm going to need to listen to this. And of course, my end goal is to get them to do a breathing pattern to circulate the oxygen around their body. So, and the same with their thinking and their emotions, is getting them to understand and make those connections back to what that means to them. And once that all lines up beautifully, they understand how their thoughts connect to their emotions, they understand how their emotions connect to the experiences that they want, then yes, that's law of attraction. They get to that end goal and they put the energy behind that, because of course we don't get to that end point of the law of attraction without putting in the energy and understanding where that energy is flowing and that energy is going. It's giving and receiving the whole entire time. So I think it's a chicken and egg story, but I'll let others respond to that one. It's a great question.
Yeah, I hear you, LK, because so many times what we want is dictated by so many other factors other than who we are. And then sometimes we have to, when we really go into it, you realize, okay, that's not who I am. So
yeah, that's right. Yeah. And it's great working through that experience, though, with them when they get to that end goal and they realize, because, of course, goal shifting, they want to be somewhere else. When they get there, go, was that exactly what you were imagining that was going to be like? And often they say, oh, sometimes it's yes. But most of the times it's interesting, it's a no. Okay, so where are we going to go next? What experience are we going to have the next time? And how are we going to create that experience? How are we going to bridge from where we are now to get to that next experience, And they'll say, well, I'll take this step, and this step. There was a child that I worked with for a long period of time. I did work with him from about 7 years of age and take him through. At 28 years of age, he actually owns his own business, owns his own house, and he knows exactly where he's heading. But if I'd said to him back then, we're going to manifest, this is what's going to have, your life's progression for you, that would have not opened up the conversation as much as him getting to know him and how then he went through that story to get to where he is now. And he's just continuously creating experiences after experiences, but that's all he knows now. He only knows how to create the experiences that he wants. Occasionally when experience comes in left field for him and it goes, and he goes, I didn't create you. I didn't want you. How come you're showing up right now for me? He actually understands what to do with that. And I've taken many children through that exact same process, not just him, but it's interesting how that when the universe goes, yep, I need you to have this experience. I need you to have this experience because I need you to go somewhere else and do something else differently now. But because he's had all of those, he has that mindset, he has that thinking, he has that understanding, he moves through those experiences really quickly and goes, okay, where are you going to take me? And I use curiosity a lot, creativity and curiosity a lot with children, because the moment you get them curious, and children love it. And part of my program is I do use mathematical formulas to help talk to the logical brain type stuff. I've lost my train of thought there. I do take them through that logical experience. I was going somewhere with that story.
Yeah.
But it's really great to see them transition through those different life experiences and understand them, and then knowing their next step to their next journey in their lifetime. It's exciting.
That's amazing, Tommy. Like with all of you, I feel I want to be in a class with all of you and learn all this. Tammy, I have a question for you, and then I have a question for everyone to wrap it up. So Tammy, so one thing is that because you've worked in mental health, are mental health issues rising, or are we just becoming more aware of them? It just feels like it's on the rise. And if it's on the rise, are we missing some reality? Are we not? Are we missing something, which is why they are on rise, or is it that it's just that the awareness has increased and more people are coming forward? Which one do you think it is?
It's another one of those chicken and egg things. I think we are becoming more aware of what mental health challenges look like, and people are now starting to talk about the fact that they are having issues with their mental health, And we have to remember our mental health sits on a continuum. So it's from excelling all the way through to in crisis. And people tend to just talk about mental health in the negative, and it's down at that really struggling crisis end. But it's actually really important that we're talking about it in the positive end. It's like our physical health. We all have it at all times of the day. But we are now getting people starting to talk about the challenges that they're having, so that we can share stories, so that we can break down that stigma. So I think in a way, it is, we're starting to talk about it more, and we're getting more educated. But with the pressures that we are going through in life now, and the rate of change that we're going through, our brains are not able to keep up with it. And I'm loving the work that Tommy's doing, Tommy's doing, because I think that might help to start the shift, because what we're seeing is that kids of a younger age are experiencing more anxiety symptoms, and anxiety tends to be the thing that's more present in younger people, which can then lead into depression, because there is such a rate of change. Our younger people are more exposed to adult concepts, and they can't comprehend them because their brain is not built to comprehend them. And so they don't understand those emotions that they're feeling. They don't understand, why things are the way they are. And because as adults, we're not educated as much, we're not able to sit with that and say, okay, well, this is actually this is a fear response or an anxiety response, and we need to work with it. But because our brains are hardwired for negativity, anything that makes us feel unsafe will either we'll tend to push away from it, and we tend to avoid things more. So things that make us feel uncomfortable, we tend to avoid. And the more we avoid it, the more it makes us uncomfortable. And then we kind of drive those anxiety responses. So it's a little bit of both. It's the world that we're going through, and we're not teaching resilience skills. Countless people I've spoken to have said, I'm sick of being resilient. I don't want to be resilient anymore. And I get curious. Talking about curiosity is like, well, why is that? Well, it's exhausting, having to pull myself out of this chasm all the time. And it's like, yeah, but resilience is all about being proactive when you're facing adversity, so that you're not going into the chasm in the first place. It's like more like a little dip in the road, because you have all these skills built up first. And so, Tommy, you're doing amazing stuff, building those resilient skills in our young kids, so that when things do come along, that as life does, and it throws stuff our way that we don't plan for, that we're not manifesting, that we actually do have the skills to be able to cope with it, rather than just say being in a victim state, which is everything always goes wrong. I can't, no one loves me. Everyone hates me, a bit like the kids song, no one loves me. Everyone says, I think I'll stick with, like, I'll eat worms, or whatever the song is, and we tend to sit in that negative space, and then we can't get out. I've got so many people, going back to the manifesting question, so many people that I see is like, I don't want my life to look like this anymore. I don't want this. I don't want that. I don't want this. And when you ask them, well, what is it that you do want? They can't tell you what it is that you want. And it's like, well, you're not going to get what you want unless you can actually define it and then start to work towards it. If you keep on saying, I don't want this, that's all you're going to keep getting, because that's the language that you're using. So it's a little bit of both. It's that education piece that we were talking about earlier today. It's about that manifesting, being able to shift, being able to learn, being curious, playing. It's everything that everyone's been talking about today, finding our voice and sharing our stories, particularly our leaders having to be more vulnerable and sharing that they too struggle. Even
So
the
well
Instagram influencers, they all struggle, right? Every human being has struggles at times. We all slide down the mental health continuum. So it's again a chicken and egg.
And when we understand, and it is really about understanding those struggles, and getting them excited about having a struggle as well. So when those struggles do come up, they go, oh, opportunity to grow. I'm going to learn something totally different about
that's
me
the
out
light
of this.
bulb.
But yeah,
That's the light bulb
it's just
that goes on.
just love seeing those light bulb moments when they get to embrace the struggle. You know, I've got children who ring me up and go, I really struggled with this today. I said, great, what'd you learn about that? You know, what'd you learn from that? You know, but we learned that concepts as adults, and that's why I love teaching that concept to children, because we can understand and embrace those struggles and really get excited about having a struggle in life, because that means it's an opportunity to grow. And that's probably where I was going with that story before. When those left field experiences did come in for him, he got excited about them, because opportunity to grow, opportunity for me to do something different. So yeah, it is exciting.
That's
Yeah.
wonderful, Elsie. So
We have an immediate.
just 1 minute. I before I close the session, I want to go around, because I know we have only around 10 minutes or so left. So I want to go around and hear from everyone, because this is all about how education empowers. What is the one thing which was probably the greatest education you got that you would like to pass on to everyone who's listening today? So what do you know for sure? What is the one piece of education that you want to give to our audience to empower them today?
Can I begin with my thoughts on that, please, Mansi?
Sure.
I think the word that would sum that up for me is reflection. Being able to reflect on what you've experienced is where the learning begins. And when you reflect on those who've come before you, getting back into ancestry mode, and you understand that they too have gone through the same struggles, when you reflect on those and see them come out the other side, that is empowering for you. We all have special rituals and we all venerate our ancestors. We do it in different ways. And we've just come through a period of time which is a very important one on the calendar. In America, they call it Halloween. In Celtic ceremonies, we call it All Hallows Eve. And this is the celebration of the dead. We think on our ancestors and we learn from them. And therefore, we can move forward with much more confidence, knowing that we can overcome in the same way as our ancestors did. So reflection for me is the best learning tool that I would pass on to anyone in whatever stream of learning that you're in. You can be learning, you can then apply it, but the best learning comes from when you reflect on what you've learned and then you change your life.
Yep.
Thank you so much, Coach Carol. Thank you.
So for me, thank you, Carol. That was great. I think reflection definitely is very, very powerful, but I think it's also I think it's also about what comes first is about what's going on in our own lives. It is about reflection. It's also about acknowledgement of where you're at. I think the whole external world comes into existence based on what you're processing on the inside and where you're at with that. Sometimes we have to accept that things are challenging and we're in the process of becoming and being, and it doesn't mean you have to be there, because even being in that process is still powerful in itself. Because again, the calling of what we have is higher than who we actually are. I really believe that. Because sometimes people will say, I don't even know how that happened. Like, where did that come from? And it's just because you were available, and availability is important because you believe you're available, because you believe there's something even beyond yourself when it comes to communication and being. Communication to me is to be with others and to make a difference in somebody's life. So yeah, that whole self-compassion, understanding that we're in the making, and we're going to falter, and it's okay. And that understanding that calling is even beyond. So even if you can see yourself shortcoming, right, or limited in some way, you can believe for more, because doors will open. Yeah.
I think you go, okay.
Thank you. For me, I think it's about curiosity and playfulness, the same as what Tammy was saying earlier as well, because, playfulness is the best meditation you can ever do, because, if something's really tricky happening for us at the present moment, we go into that playfulness space, our brain actually relaxes. It brings out a whole pile of more chemicals into a play, and it relaxes the body. So going into a playfulness, and I teach that with families, I say, well, when things get really tricky for you, what I want you to do is stop and play and be really in that moment of that playfulness experience. Now, every time you go into a playful experience, an aha moment always drops in. Always, because your brain is in that best relaxation space that it can be. And then after that, the parent can actually solve the problems that they were wanting to solve with their young people, because they've purely gone into that playfulness space, and both of their minds and their brains have had that opportunity to relax. And just to be curious, just to be curious about what's actually happening for you, and to sit down. And curiosity and reflection are perfect partners that go together, because when we're curious, we actually naturally go into this nice reflection space. And once again, coming out of curiosity, aha moments always drop in. You go, that's it. That's what I need to do next, or where I need to be going next. So yeah, that's where I was going. Over to you, Tammy.
I wholeheartedly agree with the play. And I'm playing more and more as I'm getting older. I give bubbles as homework in my mental health first aid courses. Yeah. People have to go off and have fun with bubbles and use it as a mindfulness activity. But play is super important. But I think the biggest learning that I have that I want to share with other people is that no matter how bad your life is, you have the choice to make a change. And the world can be different for you. No matter what's happened for you in the past, it is in the past. It doesn't exist anymore. And tomorrow hasn't happened yet, and tomorrow never happens, right? You can picture it, you can worry about it, but it's never going to be what you've worried about. So the only thing you have is the right now, the present, and you have a choice in the present moment to make a change, to do something different if things are struggling for you. And it might just be the tiniest little thing. It might be getting out of bed and making the bed. And that's the only thing you do that you change in your day. But that's one tiny little step towards creating the world that you want to live. So that's my bit.
Thank you, Tammy. I feel we've been in a school getting educated through you all, not just what you teach, but really how you have lived your life. Because how you lived your life has reflected in everything you have shared and everything you have taught us today. Coach Carol, thank you for your lesson of reflection and the lesson to reflect on our lives, and also to reflect on that of our ancestors, and through that lens, reflect back on us again. So really grateful for that lesson today. And Maria, thank you so much for again, teaching through your engaging voice, teaching us how to, take care of our current reality, but then keep expanding and listen to the calling of the higher, keep listening to a higher level than ourselves. And really, I feel that when I listen to your music, I do feel I'm going higher, like I'm going higher in different levels, and I can feel that expansion happening in me. So thank you for that lesson. And I would like to thank LK for really bringing in play and curiosity, because we have this awe as a child, and somewhere it gets lost. And I have never seen a child who's not in awe of the world and of life, and somewhere. And you're teaching that to kids as well as to parents and all of us today. And it is so heartening for everyone. I think we feel a little more playful knowing that our kids are learning to be aware we can become more playful, and bringing that into our lives. So thank you so much, LK, for that lesson of play and curiosity. And Tammy, thank you so much for bringing us, back to the present moment, because it's so true that we don't know what's going to happen. No one could have predicted the pandemic quite in this way. And yet we are all living through it. And really, becoming aware of the present and the choices that are available. Thank you so much for that lesson. Before I give you the message of Dr. Yugandhar and Grandma Parisha, if we wanted to circle and if you wanted to share your handle and how people could find you, if you could quickly go around and if you could just share your handle and how our readers and listeners could find you all.
Yes, everyone can find me online, Coach Carol online.
Perfect.
Yep. You can find me on the socials either under LK Tommy or the Resilience Tutor, or my website is thetommyconnection.com.au.
Thank you.
So for me, it's tammyhorton.com. You can find my website, or the phoenixinitiative.com.au. So that's PHYNIX initiative, and of course all the socials as well.
Yes, and you can find me on mariapalicano.com and on Linktree. So you can go ahead and look at all the links on that and social media.
Yes,
Thank
I
you so much
see you put yours in the chat like mine. That's great. Thanks, Jim.
Yeah.
Maria.
Thank you. So I wanted to share a message by Dr. Yugandhar and Grandma Parisha. We have certificates for all of you. And we didn't have a certificate for one or two people, so I've decided to give you all later on. I couldn't give some of you and not, but really there is a certificate of speaker thanking you for being here at the Global Transformation Festival in Australia 2021 by Dr. Yugandhar and Grandma Parisha. And we also want to extend an invitation for you all to join the World United Council. And if you would like to be involved in our team, become part of organizing these kind of festivals, this time we are having in different nations. Earlier we went by continents, but this time we are going in nations because we really want more and more voices from the grassroots and then really connecting all of them under this umbrella. So we welcome you all. So please let us know if you would like to join. With that, I would like to conclude today. Thank you so much for enlightening us.
Thank you.
Your journey.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you to everybody who is listening. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you.